Over the spring, I did a series discussing every single WrestleMania past. And with the Royal Rumble just, 22 days away, I thought it might be fun to do the same thing for the Rumble. So, let's get started. We're going to go all the way back to 1988, and we're going to go all the way forward to 2022. Let's get started with the inaugural show, which, unlike later shows, was actually a TV special that aired on the USA Network and was won by none other than Hacksaw Jim Duggan, the nutto that ran around screaming USA, USA, USA while carrying a 2x4. The show was mostly okay, but not quite as good as I would personally hope, especially given a show that starts with frickin' Ricky Steamboat going up against Rick Rude. But one match that I can highly recommend, the tag team match between the Jumping Bomb Angels and the Glamour Girls. Just magnificent stuff. Magnificent. And since we got a hell of a lot of ground to cover, let's move on to the 1989 Royal Rumble, which was won by Big John Studd. I don't actually love this Royal Rumble show or this match all that much, but the ending to the show is great. It's Akeem the African Dream and Ted DiBiase just laying waste to poor Big John Studd until finally Big John, he basically puts Ted DiBiase in his place so that Akeem runs into him. And then he tosses Akeem over the top rope. And then he spends the last couple minutes just beating up Ted DiBiase before eliminating him. Great show. Great ending. And we're going to end things tonight with the 1990 Royal Rumble. Well, it was won by this jerk. Oh well. Still, though, this is a really great Rumble, especially with an Iron Man performance from the $1 Million Band, Ted DiBiase. Came in at number 1, was the 18th man to be eliminated, lasted a good long time, about, 48 minutes, I think. Very long time, really impressive performance. I would have loved a different winner because I hate Hulk Hogan, but it's a darn great show. Check it out, check them all out. Well, especially check this one out, I'd say. Check this one out, if nothing else. I'm discussing every Royal Rumble. Now we're going to do the Royal Rumble from 1991 all the way to 1993. Let's get started. This was a pretty weak card, in my opinion. The only match that I could really strongly recommend isn't even the Royal Rumble match, which was, well, it stunk, and it was won by this jerk again, so no. The only match that I really could strongly recommend to you is the Rockers versus the Orient Express. It's a really great tag team match, and it also starts the show, so you won't have to waste a bunch of time sitting through all kinds of boring crap. You can just watch this, then move on to the 1992 Royal Rumble. And the 1992 Royal Rumble is so good. So, I don't want to curse, but it's really good. Really, really good. This one was won by Ric Flair, who I don't hold in much higher esteem as a person than Hogan, but he's a way better wrestler than Hogan ever was. So, yeah, kudos to him. And this dude won from number 3. He outlasted 29 other guys to win the Royal Rumble. And this wasn't just any Royal Rumble match. This one was for the WWF Championship. So, yeah, big props to him. The first 2 matches on this card are really great. The next 2 matches aren't so great, and the Royal Rumble match is spectacular. So, watch the Orient Express versus the New Foundation and Watch Roddy Piper win his first Intercontinental Championship, his only championship in WWE against the Mountie. Because why would you want to miss a great moment like this? I mean, why? And now we're going to discuss the 1993 Royal Rumble, which features a title match between WWF champion Bret Hart and frickin' Razor Ramon. Excellent stuff. Excellent stuff. This one's Royal Rumble match was won by the one and only Yokozuna, who actually beat Randy Savage last to win, and even outlasted the Iron Man of the match, crazy old Bob Backlund, who came in at number 2 and was the second to last man eliminated. He lasted for over an hour. He might have outlasted Ric Flair's record from the year before, honestly. I'm discussing every Royal Rumble. Now we're going to start with the 1994 Rumble. This event features the first and only time that there were 2 winners declared for the Royal Rumble, Bret Hart and Lex Luger. What happened was at the end of the event, came down to the 2 of them, and they sort of wound up eliminating each other. And they decided, well, we kind of need a winner, so I guess they both get to fight the champion at WrestleMania. Really great match though, really great time watching it. Other matches from this card you should check out: Tatanka versus Bam Bam Bigelow, the Hart Brothers versus the Quebecers, which started out Owen and Brett's big WrestleMania feud that went on to SummerSlam and never really stopped because they were still having bad blood come the next year's Rumble. You had The Undertaker versus Yokozuna, which led into a kind of weird angle at SummerSlam where The Undertaker came back from the dead, despite being, the dead man, kind of the whole thing, to face off with an imposter Undertaker. Wasn't that crazy? One more great match from the show, IRS versus Razor Ramon. Which I guess leads me to the 95 Royal Rumble, and it's a really bad match with Taker and IRS. Just skip this one. Really just skip the first 2 matches on this card because Jeff Jarrett versus Razor wasn't much better. And this was extra disappointing because Razor Ramon had been probably the best parts of the last couple Rumble matches, or last couple Rumble pay-per-views, I should say. Hey, this was surprisingly bad. Yeesh. But not to worry, we recovered really quickly with Bret Hart versus Diesel for the WWF Championship, a rematch from their Survivor Series encounter. And we had a bit of a sleeper hit with Bob Holly and the 1-2-3 Kid going against Tatanka and Bam Bam Bigelow. So this one was really good. Make sure you check this one out. And like with most Royal Rumble matches, this one was pretty good. It was won by Shawn Michaels, his first of 2. And what was interesting about this was, for a hot minute, you'd think it was won by the British Bulldog, but then it turns out, when Shawn was eliminated, only one of his feet touched the floor. So he slipped back in, tossed out Bulldog. He wins! I'm discussing every Royal Rumble pay-per-view. Now we're moving on to the 1997 and 1996 Royal Rumble shows. Let's get going. This particular show, the 1996 show, was not the best. It had a very good Rumble and a very good WWF title match, but the rest of the card was very... Luckily, those were back-to-back, so watch Shawn Michaels give Sweet Chin Music to Diesel and kick him out of the Rumble, and watch Bret Hart and The Undertaker beat the crap out of each other for 30 minutes until Diesel decides to be a sore loser and interfere in their match, setting up Taker and Diesel's match at Mania 12. It's good stuff. Skip ahead to those matches and then move on to the 97 show, which is slightly better. It features an Intercontinental Championship match between Hunter Hearst Helmsley and Goldust, and Goldust had actually had a match the year before at the Rumble with Razor Ramon, and this one thankfully has a lot less questionable elements for the story than the Razor Ramon feud did. So let's be thankful for that. And the actual match is really good too. So definitely check it out. It opens the show, so you won't have to sit through a ton of bad crap. And then watch Stone Cold win the '97 Rumble. Uh, he came in at number 5, I want to say. He won the whole thing, but the interesting technicality is he'd been eliminated by Bret Hart before, but the refs were busy trying to break up a fight outside the ring between Mankind and Terry Funk, so no one actually saw him be eliminated. And so he came in and went ahead and eliminated Bret Hart, and he won. And then his title shot was taken from him because he obviously cheated. Sucks to suck. Speaking of Bret, though, Stone Cold's face when Bret's music hits is just great. He's eliminated the field at this point. He's acting like he's king of the mountain. And then Bret's music hits, and he's just like, he panics big time. It's great. And then we move ahead to Psycho Sid versus Shawn Michaels, a match I didn't have high hopes for, but really wound up enjoying, so go ahead and check that one out. The matches in between Hunter and Goldust and the Rumble, not so great. Go ahead and skip that. So yeah, just watch Hunter and Goldust, watch Sid and Shawn, watch the Rumble, then move on to the next show. That's my recommendation. Have a great day. I'm discussing every Royal Rumble. Today I'm a little bit behind the ball, so we're going to tackle 3 again. Today we're going to be discussing the 1998, 1999, and 2000 Royal Rumbles. Let's get started. So the 1998 Royal Rumble, it's a pretty mid show. It's not bad, but it's not very good either. Everything's just kind of 3 out of 5, whatever, take it or leave it. So the only matches I'm going to strongly recommend are the Royal Rumble match, won by Stone Cold Steve Austin, fair and square this time, and The Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels in a WWF title match in a casket match. Check those out, and we're going to move on to the 1999 Royal Rumble. Now, this was a good show. Most of the matches were pretty good, but the ones I want to recommend first and foremost, Luna versus Sable, just because I was shocked to find that it was an actual match and not just, a fucking brawn panty spectacle. But the really great match you want to check out is The Rock versus Mankind for the WWF title in an I Quit match. This one is pretty infamous for the fact that at one point, The Rock hit Mankind in the head with a chair, not once, not twice, but 10 freaking times. There's actually a documentary about this whole thing where you can actually see Mankind checking himself out after the match, and he's just like, oh shit, we went a little too far. Amusingly, though, this Royal Rumble match was won by Vince freaking McMahon by eliminating Stone Cold when he and Stone Cold were number 1 and number 2 respectively. Moving over to the 2000 Royal Rumble, check out the actual Royal Rumble match. This one was won by a now babyface Rock, the People's Champion, and also featured a WWF title match between Triple H and Cactus Jack, a Extreme Rules match, lovely, lovely, and we also had an epic tables match between the Hardys and the Dudleys, so check that out. The 1999 and 2000 Royal Rumble matches are also pretty famous for the fact that China entered into it. It was the only time, and then the second time in WWE history that a woman entered the men's Royal Rumble. Before, of course, there was a women's Royal Rumble, but that's pretty neat. Always a trailblazer. Always a trailblazer, that China. Always a trailblazer. I'm discussing every Royal Rumble. Today we're discussing the 2001, 2002, and 2003 Royal Rumble shows. Let's get started with, the 2001 Rumble, which we're right here on. And it was won by Stone Cold Steve Austin, making him the only three-time Royal Rumble winner. Pretty cool, huh? Also on this card, we had Edge and Christian versus the Dudley Boys, Chris Benoit and Chris Jericho for the Intercontinental Championship in a ladder match. And we had Kurt Angle versus Triple H for the WWF Championship. I don't love this match, but it's still really, really good. Just check it out. We had a really awful match between Chyna and Ivory where it looked like Chyna was just going to squash Ivory, which would have been fine. But we also had this really tasteless plot for the match where Chyna had had a neck injury. In story, she was fine in reality. And right when it looks like she's about to win, she just collapses. Like, oh no! And it's so dumb to me. Just let her win or just don't do the match. Fuck, it might be better if you had just let it sit there until the Rumble, but they didn't, so we'll move on. Next up, we have the 2002 Royal Rumble, which was won by Triple H. It was his first of two. We'll get to the second one a little later. This card also featured a match between Vince McMahon and Ric Flair. Flair's first appearance at WWE in a good 10 years. Yeah, he last appeared in 92. On the match check out would be Taz and Spike Dudley versus the Dudley Boys. A very good match. And Chris Jericho versus The Rock for the Undisputed Championship. That was a really good one. And then we move on to the 2003 Royal Rumble, which was won by the now current WWE Champion, Brock Lesnar. And it also featured a WWE title match between Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit. Both the Benoit matches are really good, but I feel bad about recommending them because Google Chris Benoit. I don't think I can talk about it on TikTok. A couple funny things from each Rumble. In the 2002 Royal Rumble, there was this really hilarious spot where Hurricane Helms tried to choke slam Triple H and Stone Cold Steve Austin until they were both just like, wait, why the fuck it, let's just eliminate this idiot. And there's also a bit with Drew Carey entering the Royal Rumble in 2001. He eliminated himself as soon as Kane showed up because I'm discussing every Royal Rumble. Now we're going to talk about the 2004 and 2005 Royal Rumble shows. Let's get started. Starting with the 04 show, this one was won by Chris Benoit. And, well, can't avoid the subject forever. On June 22nd, 2007, Chris Benoit unalived his son. And then on June 23rd of that same year, he unalived his wife. Then, on June 24th, that same year, he unalived himself. It was a horrific tragedy, and there were numerous factors in why Benoit made the choices he made over that weekend. But the fact of the matter is, this is a man who did a terrible thing, and no match, no matter how great it is, excuses it. So, while I do think this was a very good Royal Rumble match, I do not feel comfortable recommending it to you. So if you don't want to watch it, You don't have to. That's it. The rest of the card personally just doesn't do it for me, but Triple H versus Shawn Michaels actually was pretty good. It has a terrible ending, but it's pretty good. And on a far less controversial note, we now have the 2005 Royal Rumble, which was won by Rax the Destroyer himself, Dave Bautista. Need a little wrinkle with this one, though. You see, Dave was scripted to be the winner, but at the end of the match, he and John Cena actually went over the top rope. And unlike with the 94 Rumble, instead of just going with it, Vince McMahon came out, yelled at everyone, and said, restart the match with just these two. Then Dave won it, so good for him. Other matches you should check out, Edge vs. Shawn Michaels, really fantastic stuff. Also, The Undertaker versus Heidenreich. It was a match I had very low expectations for, but it ended up really surprising me. Check it out. I'm discussing every Royal Rumble. Today we're discussing the 2006, 2007, and 2008 Royal Rumbles. Let's get started. So first up, the 06 Rumble, which was won by the one and only Rey Mysterio, who won from number 2. There's actually a really sweet story with this win here. Rey's good friend, a fellow wrestler named Eddie Guerrero, had passed away the autumn prior to this Royal Rumble show. And he'd said that he would be dedicating his win to Eddie. And there's a little backstage segment between matches where you see Rey picking his number. He sees he's got a really crappy number, and for a split second he's disappointed, but then he smiles and just thinks, this is what Eddie would do. This is absolutely something Eddie would pull on me. Hey, I try to do something nice for him, and he decides, yeah, Chico, I'm going to make sure you come out in the second worst position possible. And then, of course, he won, which is just delightful. As for the rest of the show, it's really delightful as well, minus one match that I encourage you to avoid, because it's just awful. Do not watch, under any circumstances, the Boogeyman versus JBL. Just don't do it. You deserve better. You deserve better. Next up, we have the 2007 Royal Rumble, which was won by The Undertaker. He came in from number 30, making him actually the first person to win from what you would assume is the best position to enter the Royal Rumble from. It was a pretty great match, but also check out the Hardys versus MNM. That was a pretty good match. And also check out the WWE title match between Umaga and John Cena. It's bloody stuff, but it's fantastic. Speaking of John Cena, we now went on to the 2008 Royal Rumble, which was won by Peacemaker himself, John Cena, who also won from the number 30 position in a big surprise because the man had been out on injury for several months. It was expected that he would miss the Royal Rumble, but he surprised everyone, including the people in the Rumble. It was a pretty good card overall, but the other match I would most recommend you check out besides the Rumble match, Jeff Hardy versus Randy Orton. Fantastic stuff. And that's it. Have a great night. I'm discussing every Royal Rumble. Today I'm discussing the 2009 and 2010 Royal Rumble shows. Let's get started with 2009, which was won by Randy Orton. It was his first of 2. We'll get to the second one a little later down the line. But this show also featured Matt Hardy versus the charisma-less Jack Swagger, now known as Jake Hager, in AEW, who still lacks any kind of charisma. Joking aside, it was a pretty good match. As much as I don't like Jack Swagger as a character, just because he's a void, he's still a very talented performer. So yeah, check this one out if you feel like it. Also on this card, we had JBL versus John Cena for the World Heavyweight Championship. Uh, there was an interesting subplot here with Shawn Michaels being made JBL's assistant because this was 2009 and the economy was in the toilet. Nothing changed, as you can see. Uh, Basically, JBL hired Shawn to help him out with this match, and it ended with John winning anyway, despite Shawn giving both guys a good old sweet chin music. It was a pretty good match, though. Check it out. Since I talked about everything else, I also should talk about Melina versus Beth Phoenix. It was a pretty decent match, but I mean, it was a women's match from 2009. I don't know what you're expecting, but if you're expecting something on par with, I don't know, Bayley versus Charlotte, you're going to be disappointed. They're great, but they're not in a place where they can show that off yet. Back to the actual Royal Rumble match. It was pretty good, so you don't have to skip that. Go ahead and watch the whole show. Moving on to the 2010 Royal Rumble. This one was won by Edge, the Radar Superstar, who was returning from injury after 8 months, and the doctors actually said he would be out for 14, so lucky him. It was also his first of 2 wins. The last one, well, that's a little further down the line. Also check out, well, the match I most recommend is Sheamus versus Randy Orton. The rest of the card is pretty good, though, save for Mickie James versus Michelle McCool, because the whole angle is just terrible. It really is. I'm not going to explain why it's terrible, it just is. Just don't watch this one. Please don't. I'm discussing over Royal Rumble. Today we're discussing the 2011 Royal Rumble, which was won by... It was won by Alberto Del Rio, and... Look, I'm not going to lie to you. I think Del Rio is kind of a crappy person, but, like... Let's be honest, this is professional wrestling. Half the people we like are crappy people. So, I don't know how much I can criticize this decision for that, but I can criticize it for being just boring, because Del Rio, like Jack Swagger, who I complained about in the previous one, the previous Rumble TikTok I did, is just a personality vacuum. I don't hate this guy because he's a heel. I hate him because he's boring. Talking about other people I hate, we also have the Randy Orton, who I don't hate, versus The Miz for the WWE Championship, and I do hate The Miz. Miz won this match off of interference from CM Punk, who I love, but this made me question that for a solid 5 minutes, I think. So there's that. But moving over to people I don't hate, we also have Edge versus Dolph Ziggler for the World Heavyweight Championship, and I don't hate either of these people, so this was good. What was interesting about this one, though, is there was an added stipulation here that if Edge used his finishing move, the spear, at all during the match, he would be disqualified and lose his title to Dolph. When the referee was down, he used the spear anyway, and that's how he won. Cheating for the win. And in the midst of all that, we also had Natalya versus Layla versus Michelle McCool versus Eve for the WWE Divas Championship. This one was won by Eve, and what's interesting here is it was initially supposed to be a handicap match with Natalya going up against Michelle and Layla, but the anonymous Raw GM, look that one up, kids, he decided, no, screw that. This is going to be a 4-way. and we're adding Eve to this. And she won, so good for her. Check the whole show out. It was pretty good. I'm discussing every Royal Rumble. Today we're discussing the 2012 and 2013 Royal Rumble shows. So let's get started with, well, the 2012 show. Yeah, this is the poster for it. I don't get it either. Let's move on. The winner for this one was Sheamus of all people, which, good for him, I guess. I wouldn't have called it, but good for him. It also featured a WWE title match between CM Punk and Dolph Ziggler. We also had a World Championship match in a steel cage between Daniel Bryan, The Big Show, and Mark Henry. And if you're someone who started following wrestling in the last couple of years, or even like I did actually during the pandemic, this isn't the same Daniel Bryan who left WWE over the summer and then arrived in AEW as Bryan Danielson, just the most amazing wrestler ever. This was his period as a more scrappy underdog. It's still a good match, but moderate your expectations here. This isn't the same guy you've come to know more recently. We also had a really awful match with John Cena and Kane. It ended in a double countout, and then the segment continued with Kane just going out of his way to torture poor Zack Ryder, now known in the indie scene as Matt Cardona, and just, what did this poor guy do to anyone? What is the point of this? There was also a really, really bad match between Drew McIntyre and Brodus Clay, where Brodus Clay just squashed Drew. That was, what a difference 8 years makes, though. No kidding. We also had a Divas match with Beth Phoenix, Natalya, the Bella Twins, going against Eve Torres, Tamina, Alicia Fox, and Kelly Kelly. It was actually pretty good. Check it out if you want to. Moving over to 2013, the winner was John Cena, and we had a WWE Championship match between CM Punk and The Rock. This was won by The Rock, and so we had Rock vs. Cena 2 at WrestleMania for the WWE Championship. There was a really fun match for the Tag Team Championships between Team Hell No and Team Rhodes Scholars. That was Kane and Daniel Bryan going against Damian Sandow and Cody Rhodes. God, what a difference 8 years makes. We had a match between Big Show and Alberto Del Rio, who WWE were still trying to make a thing. It was actually pretty good, so go ahead and check it out. Check out the whole show. It was good. Really good. I'm discussing every Royal Rumble. Today we're discussing the 2014, 2015, and 2016 Royal Rumble shows. Let's get started. First up, we have the 2014 Rumble, which was won by Drax the Destroyer again, Batista. It was a rather controversial decision, and, well, you believe the rumors, Batista himself knew this was going to be a controversial decision, and, well, he was right. This inevitably wound up leading to the main event of WrestleMania 30 being Randy versus Batista versus Daniel Bryan. Speaking of Daniel, we also had a match between Daniel Bryan and Bray Wyatt, which was fantastic. A pretty cool match between Randy Orton and John Cena was also on this card. We had a really not cool match between Brock Lesnar and The Big Show, which you can skip because it sucks. This Rumble also has the dubious distinction of being CM Punk's last appearance in a WWE ring and a professional wrestling ring in general for a good 7 years before he made his return in AEW this past summer, which is something I'm very happy about personally. The actual Rumble match, though, was actually pretty good, so yeah, still check it out. Next up, we have the 2015 Rumble, which featured a match between Brock Lesnar, John Cena, and Seth freaking Rollins for the WWE World Heavyweight Championship. This was fantastic, so you can go ahead and check this one out. The actual Royal Rumble match was won by Roman Reigns and ended with an endorsement from The Rock himself. It didn't help. Everyone in this crowd hated the fact that Roman Reigns won this match. Everyone hated Roman for pretty much, God, the next 6 years, I think, 5 years, until he became the tribal chief. It was not a great idea. The rest of this card was fine, but if you only have time for the Rumble and the WWE Championship match, that's all you really need. Moving on, we have the 2016 Rumble. And this poster is a lie because John Cena does not appear anywhere on this card. He isn't even in the Royal Rumble match. What the hell? Yeah, this feels a little more appropriate because this match was for Roman Reigns' WWE Championship. And it was won by none other than Triple H, his second victory in the Royal Rumble. Another match you should absolutely positively check out, the last man standing match for the Intercontinental Championship between Dean Ambrose and Kevin Owens. Check this out, it's fantastic. I'm discussing every Royal Rumble. Today we're discussing the 2017 Royal Rumble. So, let's get started. This Royal Rumble show was won by none other than Randall Keith Orton, his second win, and he did so by last eliminating none other than Roman Reigns. It was a pretty solid Royal Rumble match, lots of fun, great spots with Brock, Braun Strowman, Goldberg, The Undertaker, a fun save from Kofi Kingston like he had been doing over the past couple of years. Really great fun, really good stuff. We also had AJ Styles versus John Cena, which was the match that ultimately made John Cena a 16-time world champion, tying Ric Flair's record. Hence why I chose this particular picture for this match. It was a really great match. I saw moves from John Cena in this one that I never expected him to bust out. Like, he did a freaking figure four. He did a freaking Panama Sunrise. It was really phenomenal stuff. No kidding, man. Great stuff. We also had a Universal Championship match between Roman Reigns and Kevin Owens, with the stipulation that Chris Jericho had to be suspended above the ring inside a shark cage the whole match. At one point, Jericho drops down a set of brass knuckles to give to Kevin. Kevin uses them, and the match continues. Because Roman Reigns somehow kicked out of a freaking Superman punch with a pair of brass knucks. I don't know how he did that, but okay. It was a great match, though. Really fun stuff, so go ahead and check this one out, too. I've never really followed 205 Live very much, but we had a really fun Cruiserweight Championship match between Rich Swann, the champion, who is now working at Impact. He was the Impact World Champion when Kenny Omega beat him. When Kenny Omega became the Impact Champion, he was the guy Kenny had to beat last year. And we had, on the other side of that match, we had Neville, who now goes by Pac in AEW. So this was a really fun match. And this card actually opened with a women's championship match between Bayley and champion Charlotte Flair, which was really phenomenal stuff. I mean, between this and Becky versus Charlotte for the Divas title the year before, I think we are long past the Divas era, thank goodness. So yeah, this was a really fun show. Go ahead and check it out. Great stuff. I'm discussing every Royal Rumble. Today we're discussing the 2018 and 2019 Royal Rumble shows. Let's get started. So the thing that's interesting about the 2018 Royal Rumble is that it actually introduced the first women's Royal Rumble match, which was won by Asuka, the Empress of Tomorrow, who is one of my personal favorites and is also a favorite of my best friend Megan. Love you, girl. And yeah, this was a really great Royal Rumble match, especially to start off a new era for the women in WWE. There's been a lot of progress at this point of women's wrestling in general, but particularly in WWE, was being taken a lot more seriously than it had been in the past 10 years, probably longer. And seeing so many women from different eras, the Attitude Era, Ruthless Aggression, the frickin' Divas era, just finally getting to strut their stuff for real when and a lot of them hadn't been in an era where they could show off their skill. Well, that was really great to see. And I think Asuka as the inaugural winner was just a fucking perfect choice. Brilliant choice. And on the men's side of things, you had Shinsuke Nakamura winning, which was a big moment. You also had two pretty fun world title matches with AJ Styles going up against Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn in a handicap match, which was a lot of fun. And you also have Kane versus Braun Strowman versus Brock Lesnar. The match is good, but it ends like basically right after it begins. It's far too short. But this is something that I don't care for with a lot of Brock Lesnar matches. And personally, they end as soon as they start. They don't go anywhere. It's just F5 suplex. I win. Where's the entertainment there? Let's get a real fight here. That's just my personal opinion. Still a really fun show though. Big recommend for the 2018 Rumble. When we move on to the 2019 Royal Rumble, which featured a barn burner between AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan, a match between Finn Balor and Brock Lesnar that starts exciting as all hell, and then it ends after basically 9 minutes. So, a really underrated match between Sasha Banks and Ronda Rousey, a pretty well-regarded match between Asuka and Becky Lynch, Becky then winning the Rumble, and her boyfriend Seth doing the same. Great. I'm discussing every Royal Rumble. Today we're discussing the 2020 Royal Rumble. Almost done, just 2 more left after this. Let's get started. The women's Rumble match was won by Charlotte Flair, who came in at number 17, I believe. And the men's Royal Rumble was started by Brock Lesnar, and he was eliminated by eventual winner Drew McIntyre, the Scottish psychopath. And this Rumble also featured the return of the rated R superstar Edge. After 9 years of being retired, 9 years of being away from the business, on this day, 2 years ago, he saw clearly and everything had come to light because he was back. And that is just something just plain wonderful. On this card, you had a really well-regarded match between Asuka and Becky Lynch again, this time with Becky the champ and Asuka challenger. You had a pretty decent match between Bayley and Lacey Evans for the SmackDown Women's Championship. You had a really underrated match, a really underrated strap match between The Fiend and Daniel Bryan for the Universal Championship. This match doesn't really get a lot of talk, and I really think it deserves more love. It's a really great match. Another match that doesn't get talked about, but doesn't deserve to be talked about, is King Corbin versus Roman Reigns. This was probably a good... Oh, yeah. This was about 7 months before Roman came back and turned heel. He took time off from WWE right before WrestleMania because of the pandemic, and Roman here is a survivor of leukemia 2 times over, so he had pretty valid concerns about the whole thing. Then he came back after SummerSlam 2020 and became the tribal chief, and he went from being a heel, he went from being a babyface that no one liked to a heel that no one wants to boo because he's just so freaking awesome. Yeah. But talking about the match itself, it's not great. Don't watch it. Just skip straight to the Women's Royal Rumble match. You won't regret it. So tomorrow we got the 2021 Royal Rumble, and then the day after that, we get to do my predictions for the 2022 Royal Rumble, and then I talk about the actual Rumble itself on Saturday after the show. Let's have a great night. Let's have a great weekend. Let's do this. I'm discussing every Royal Rumble. Today we're discussing 2021 Royal Rumble. One more left. 34 down. The men's Royal Rumble match was won by none other than Edge, who first won the match back in 2010 and won it for a second time last year. It was a really great Royal Rumble match, but at the time and even now, I still say that this should have gone to a different performer. Either somebody who was there every week, or, well, yeah, that's it. Somebody who was there every week, either a young up-and-comer or a veteran talent who hadn't had that big moment just yet. And I was rooting for Daniel Bryan at the time, but that didn't happen. He still got to go to WrestleMania that year, though, so oh well. The women's match was won by none other than Bianca Belair, and this is a spectacular Royal Rumble match. It's actually one of my favorites, and Bianca is most definitely my favorite Royal Rumble winner. I really loved her speech at the end. I really loved just everything about Bianca. I am so glad she won this Rumble, and I am so glad she got to have that great match with Sasha Banks last year. And I really hope she wins the Rumble this year. Opening this card, we had a pretty forgettable match between Drew McIntyre and Goldberg. I don't like this match. I'm just glad that Goldberg didn't bury another younger talent. Like, dear God, am I glad he didn't win this match. Oh God, I am glad. A not often talked about match that I actually really enjoyed. Sasha Banks versus Carmella. Sasha's title reign as SmackDown Women's Champion, I don't think it was the best, but I think Sasha herself was a great champion, and I thought that she and Carmella had a really good match here. And in between the two Rumble matches, we had Kevin Owens versus Roman Reigns. This time, Roman was the Universal Champ, and Kevin was the challenger, and it was pretty darn great. One really goofy spot, though, there's a moment where Roman is handcuffed to a light fixture of some sort. And this was a last man standing match, so if Roman couldn't get to his feet before 10, then he lost the match. And the ref is counting, he reaches 9, and then he stops counting because the planned finish is, of course, Roman wins, and he can't get up in time for the 10 count, so the ref just kind of stops counting. It's still a really great match, though, which I really recommend. I really recommend this whole show. I'm discussing every Royal Rumble. Tomorrow I'm discussing the 2022 Royal Rumble. Today, I'm giving you all my predictions for this event. Let's get started. First up, we have Doudrop, aka Piper Niven, going up against Becky Lynch. I think safe money here is on Becky, but I think Doudrop is going to make her work for it. I think it's going to be a pretty great match. A match I have very low expectations for is Beth Phoenix and Edge versus The Miz and Maurice. I don't like Miz. I've mentioned this before, and my expectation is Beth and Edge are just going to make these two look like fools. And I hope that's the end of it. I hope that's the end of Edge and The Miz working together for now. I really hope that Edge moves on to feuding with other people, because this is just not something I want to see personally. That's just me. Then we have Bobby Lashley versus Brock Lesnar. You know, this is a dream feud that I think has actually turned out to be pretty disappointing. I mean, you've just had the usual thing WWE does, where they just build up how great the champion is by making the challenger look like he's just nothing. Knock, knock. Who's there? Bobby. Bobby who? Exactly, Paul. No. My hope here is that this ends with Bobby beating Brock, and then Bobby going on to face who I think is going to win the Royal Rumble. But I'll talk about that in just a few minutes. Actually, no, not a few minutes, in a few seconds. But before that, we have Roman Reigns versus Seth Rollins. I think Roman is going to retain again here. Or I don't think Roman is going to drop the title anytime soon. If he was going to drop it, I would expect him to drop it at Mania, but we'll see how that goes. Then there's the Men's Royal Rumble, and I think this one is going to go to Big E. E is going to win the Rumble, then he's going to challenge Bobby, and he's going to get his baby back. That's my prediction. On the women's side, I think it's going to be Bianca Belair, who's going to be the first one to win the Rumble twice. But also, one other thing to talk about here, one other thing to discuss, we have Mickie James arriving as the Impact Knockouts champion. She was fired from WWE last year. She made a big stink about it, her treatment, and she went on to become a free agent, wrestling in different promotions, and is now working in Impact. I think she will make a big presence, but she won't be made a fool of. That's my. I've been discussing every Royal Rumble. Tonight, I'm finally discussing the 2022 Royal Rumble. Let's get this over with because this one. We started the show with Roman Reigns versus Seth Rollins, which was actually a really good match, but it ended in Roman losing via DQ because he refused to break a submission hold on Seth. Probably the best match of the night. I really hope that this story continues, but I get the feeling this is going to be put on the shelf very soon. Later on in the show, we had Brock Lesnar versus Bobby Lashley. Bobby won off of interference from Roman, who speared Brock when Bobby was down, while the ref was down. Then took the WWE Championship from Paul and hit Brock in the head with it. Bobby then pinned Brock and he won. It was actually a decent match to start, but then we got so much unnecessary bullcrap, and I just reminded of this moment from Mission Impossible 6. My thoughts exactly, Henry. My thoughts exactly. Before that, we had Becky Lynch versus Doudrop. Pretty decent match, but the crowd was dead. This was right after the Women's Rumble, and it was pretty clear all of the energy had just left the building at that point. We also had Beth Phoenix and Edge versus The Miz and Maurice. It was good, but I didn't care about it at all. I just don't care about The Miz or Maurice. I don't like these characters. I don't enjoy watching them. I really wish this wasn't a thing. But then we had the Women's Royal Rumble, which was won by not Bianca, like I'd hoped, but a returning Ronda Rousey. Fuck you, Vince. Fuck you. And we ended the night with the Men's Royal Rumble, which I thought would be won by Big E, but instead we got Brock. Making him another in the two-time Royal Rumble winner club. Fucking why? I'm mad right now. I feel like I wasted a whole bunch of time doing this series. I don't get these booking decisions. I just don't. I don't get it. Thank you all for watching, and Woodstock out.